Hey guys, Adam here with AmericanMuscle.com. Today we're taking a closer look at, listening to, and installing the Borla Stinger S-Type catback exhaust with black chrome tips, available for the 2018 and newer Mustang GT Fastback with the active exhaust system. Now, full disclosure guys, before we get into it, if you do not have an active exhaust equipped S550, this is not going to be for you, but there are a ton of other options in the category to fit your package. But the guys with the active exhaust might be looking to get something that is streetable, but still on the louder side of the volume spectrum with a deep, throaty, and aggressive tone. If that's what you're looking for, the Stinger S-Type's got you covered. Now, as you heard from our sound clips just a second ago there, I'm gonna give this one 3 out of 5, bordering on 4 out of 5 on our loudness meter. Now, of course, the active exhaust has 4 modes: quiet, normal, sport, and track, so that's what you're hearing in the sound clips. And to start off with quiet there, this is something that's gonna keep you from waking your neighbors at cold start every morning. Even though it's an aftermarket exhaust with that higher loudness volume rating, quiet mode is still gonna keep it very tamed and very subtle at startup and low revs. Now, of course, like anything, the closer you get to redline, the louder that quiet mode's gonna be, and you know, it doesn't become very quiet anymore. Normal and sport, I say, sound pretty similar. Normal and sport are gonna be the more normal driving modes. They are very aggressive. They are still pretty loud without very much drone inside the car. Once you get to track mode, especially at wide open throttle, just know you're turning heads everywhere and it's gonna wake up everyone. Now, as far as drone in all of the modes, I'll say even at highway speeds, it's very minimal. That's something I really like about Borla's systems. It's not very droney. There's not a lot of those higher squeaky frequencies that you don't want. The system they've got built into their mufflers and their resonators, the small resonators here, are muting out some of those higher frequencies. Now, the entire kit, 304 stainless steel, mandrel bent, 3-inch diameter tubing. Now that is on the larger side of the spectrum for tubing. It's also completely unrestricted for airflow with the exception of those resonators. You're replacing your factory resonator at the front of the vehicle with an X pipe, which is gonna help with horsepower and torque numbers as well as volume. The whole kit comes in right around $2,000, so it is on the more premium side, which is what we expect from Borla and an active exhaust combination. Install 2 out of 3 wrenches on our difficulty meter. I'm saying anybody can tackle this with simple hand tools and a little bit of patience in the driveway at home. You can do it in about 2, maybe 3 hours depending on your experience. I'm gonna take you through every step of the process. Let's get to it. The tools used in this install include an impact gun, an extension, a ratchet, 10, 13, and 15 millimeter deep sockets, 10 millimeter wrench, a mallet, and PB Blaster or WD-40. So the first step of our uninstall here is actually pretty simple. We're gonna start at the complete back end of our 2018. We're actually gonna disconnect the active exhaust valve actuators right on the top side of our exhaust tips. So really from here, we're gonna stick our hand straight up. The plug is right up here. You just pull back on the locking tab, pinch, and release. Now we can do the same thing on the other side. This is our plug. I'm gonna push back on the locking tab, pinch, and pull straight back. The next step here is to grab a 15 millimeter socket and head back by your factory resonators, connecting to essentially what are your stock manifolds. Now what we're gonna do is loosen up these 2 clamps. There's 2 bolts each, and from there we'll be able to remove the hangers from the back end. But for now, let's loosen these up. Next up, we're gonna go under our subframe right behind the diff, and we're gonna remove the brackets that connect our factory hangers to the frame itself. Now, I find this easier to just unbolt it from the 13mm bolts rather than trying to slip the hangers out of the isolators. Then we can just transfer them over to our new pipes later on. So I'm gonna grab an extension and a 13mm socket. I'm gonna go right on over our rear sway bar, and I'm gonna pop these bolts off. Now what I like to do once the bolts are removed is to lift up and pop the bracket off of the subframe and just rotate them down. At this point, we have everything disconnected. What we're gonna do is bring in a helping hand. My buddy Joe is gonna help me get this exhaust off the car all in one piece. I'm gonna start by disconnecting the couplers back here by the headers or the factory manifolds. Then we're gonna slide them out of the hangers and we're gonna set it all aside. Ready, Joe? All right guys, so we finally got the factory exhaust off of our 2018 GT, and as you can see, I went home, had a little accident, no big deal, moving right along here. So we got our factory exhaust on the ground next to our Borla Stinger S-Type, and guys, I wanna take you through some of the similarities, but mainly the big differences between the two kits. I wanna start up front here. Now on your factory exhaust, you can see factory resonator, it's gonna mute some of that sound, bring down the higher frequencies. And with the active exhaust, you can really make it bark in sport and track mode, but otherwise, it's pretty tamed. And it's usually because of the mufflers and that resonator. Now, the replacement here on your Stinger is gonna be the X-Pipe. Now, this is a 3-inch mandrel bent tubing, and that's the whole case for the entire exhaust. This X-Pipe has a crossover section that eliminates any airflow restrictions that you get from the factory exhaust. Now, that's gonna bump up horsepower and torque numbers, but it's also gonna give you a louder, more aggressive, and usually a raspier volume and tone. Moving on from there, you'll also notice that there isn't really these heat shields there. We have new resonators up here, so we're deleting the resonator from the front, replacing it with these very small resonators behind our mufflers. Now, keep in mind guys, this is the street version of Borla's series of exhaust or catback exhaust. So this is something that's gonna help keep it streetable, friendly for the daily driver without getting too overwhelming. After that, the S-Type mufflers. Now the S-Types being the more sporty mufflers, the middle of the road section between the volume options in their category. The Stinger is gonna have that 3 out of 5 on the loudness meter. It's also gonna give you some of those different tones that you're hearing throughout the RPM band, giving you a barking wide open throttle, but a very tamed, idle, and low RPM growl. After that, huge change up in appearance from the rear end. You're going from the hard slash cut, pretty dull chrome tips, quad tips from the factory, retaining that quad tip functionality, but you're getting the black chrome finish, really stealthy, really aggressive look. You're also getting a thicker slash cut with 4-inch dual exhaust tips on both sides. So this is one of my favorite exit styles for the new S550. I really like the black chrome from Borla. Again, it's all personal preference. If you want just a regular chrome or polished tip, they have that in the category as well. They have a lot of stuff to fit a lot of different preferences. Now, what we are gonna have to do before we get started on the install, transfer over the factory actuators to retain that active exhaust. We're also gonna change over those factory brackets for the hangers underneath of the rear subframe. So first things first, let's do the actuators and move on from there. Now to remove the factory actuators, you're just gonna grab a 10mm socket. I like to use a 1/4-inch ratchet, it's real small. You can pop off these 3 nuts and then remove it with the spring underneath. Now when you're removing the actuator, you wanna be careful that you don't disconnect the spring from the inside. Pull straight back. You see the spring is seated here. If this falls off, you want to make sure you're putting it back on the exact same way it was from the factory. Line that up with the little notches on the inside, and you'll be able to tell if it's on properly, but try to get them all off in one piece. We're going to do the same thing for the other side. All right, now we can transfer them over. When you do that, you want to make sure you transfer them over to the exact same side. You want to make sure your driver's side actuator is on your driver's side for your new exhaust, and the same thing for your passenger. All right, now we can take our driver's side actuator and put it on our driver's side for the Borla system. Just line up the studs and drop them into place. You can peek through this little opening to make sure your spring situated itself properly. Once you can verify that, you can just thread on the factory nuts. All right, same thing on the other side. Now if you need to, you can grab a 10mm wrench and hold the bottom of the bolt head while you work on wrenching. All right, now these factory hangers, you want to make sure you're just pulling straight back and popping them off. Now, ours is this easy. I threw some white lithium on the inside there. You can use white lithium, PB Blaster, WD-40, whatever you've got to lubricate that. It'll pop off pretty easily. We're going to transfer that over to our Borla system. When you're transferring them over, you want to take note of this little tab at the top. That you want facing the front of the vehicle. Just rotate them down and out of the way. Now for our X pipe, we're going to install this first on our 2018, but before we do that, I want to show you guys these adapter plates. Now these adapter pipes right here are coming pre-installed right out of the box in it like this, but they're not clamped down. You want to make sure you're using these if you have your factory manifolds or your factory headers installed on your car. If you're using long tube headers or shorty headers, pop these bad boys out and you'll be able to use the X pipe straight to them depending on their size. Now if it's a 3-inch inlet, it'll match up to here, but because we've got our factory manifolds, we're going to use these. So grab your clamps, just put them over the ends. Grab a 15mm socket and we're going to tighten down those clamps. First step, grab that X pipe. We're going to install it right into those factory clamps on our headers. Once you got it in there, grab your 15 socket and tighten down the clamps. All right, next up is our passenger side pipe. We're going to install a clamp over the outlet of the X pipe and then move on to this pipe here, sliding that into position. You want to line it up with the subframe. So you don't want to put it on too far and it not install properly. That looks pretty good right there. Now you can tighten up that clamp. I always recommend just getting it nice and snug, but still leaving a little bit of room for adjustment until we're done. All right, same thing on the other side. All right, at this point, rotate those factory hangers up and connect the brackets back to the subframe. They'll hook right in there. Grab your factory 13mm bolts, thread those through a little bit by hand. Grab your 13mm socket and extension and tighten them down. All right, now at this point, grab your muffler. Make sure you have a clamp installed on the pipe you're inserting it into. Put those hangers into place first, into the isolator. Once you have that taken care of, line up your pipe and start working that on. All right, now if you need to, you can grab a mallet and just tap the exhaust all the way into place. Line it up where you want to, tighten down the clamp. All right, now same thing on the other side. right, now all you have to do is reach over above the tips, grab your active exhaust harness, plug the harness in to the actuator, drop the locking tab, and repeat the other side. All right guys, at this point, go back and make any adjustments that you need to. Head back and tighten down all your clamps. Well guys, that's gonna wrap up my review, install, and sound clip for the Borla Stinger S-Type catback exhaust with black chrome tips for the 18 and newer Mustang GT fastback with active exhaust. Now you should be checking this out if you're looking for a more premium brand in the category, something that's got a lot of bark, but also is tamed for the street without being too overwhelming. If you want to check out the regular chrome tips, that's available in the category. You can find both right here at AmericanMuscle.com.